Thanks everyone for joining us for our webinar, How to Use Your Content for Paid Social Media. I'm Jamie Pittman and I'm Content and Social Media Manager at White Hat. And I'm joined today by my colleague Stephen Smith, and we'll be going through some of the ways you can make the most of your content through social media advertising. If you've got any questions at all, do feel free to pop them in the webinar question box and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the webinar. And also, if you experience any sound issues, just pop a note into the chat area and I'll take a look. Okay. First off, I thought I'd go through some of the things to know for any kind of social media advertising, and a lot of these apply to other kinds of digital advertising too. These are things that you should be doing no matter what platform you're advertising on. Firstly, you need to make sure you have a clear and measurable goal. For example, community growth, clicks through to your website, engagement, sales and conversions and that kind of thing. You should work out what each is financially worth to you so you can accurately measure return on investment at the end of the campaign. Now, this might seem obvious, but with social media advertising, above all other types, it's crucial that your images stand out from the rest of the newsfeed. There's so much noise that people just skim through, so you need to use a bold, striking, and uncluttered image that really grabs people's attention, in a good way, obviously. Now, I speak from experience when I say it's important to get familiar with the image, text, and video size and format restrictions of the various platforms. Otherwise, you'll be very frustrated, for example, when your video creator provides a clip in the wrong aspect ratio, definition, and format, and you've got like half an hour to get a campaign set up. So be wary that requirements are always being updated, so it's definitely worth checking these requirements regularly. Your copy needs to be really quick, to the point, and interesting, making people want to know more rather than telling them everything you want to in one piece of text. Now, if you run one ad and it succeeds, that's great, but you won't know what it was about that ad that worked so well. So instead, you should run 2 or more ads at the same time with slightly different copy or image, and you'll have more info on what good elements to take into the next campaign. When you're first advertising on a new platform, it's certainly worth starting off with a smaller budget just to get a taste of what advertising on that platform can do for you before you invest a lot of money in a campaign. Like I say, this is not specific to any one platform. This is relevant for all social media, actually. Now, you don't want to end your campaign with no figures to pick through. So it's important that you ensure that tracking is correctly set up, connecting your landing pages to Google Analytics via the goal tracking functionality. Connected to that is use UTMs in linked URLs. Now, you can use these tags to enable you to delve deep into the data in Google Analytics. The handy chart that I've popped up on the screen there shows you how to create a custom UTM tag that will give Google Analytics everything it needs for you to be able to rifle through source and medium data at the end of the campaign. Really, really useful stuff. It's all about basically just getting as much information and as much data that you can so that once it comes to the end of the campaign, you've got everything you need to improve the next one. Now, a successful ad will get plenty of engagement with people liking and commenting on it. Whilst it can come across as a bit desperate to reply to every single comment, I would recommend not leaving direct questions to your business without a reply. If someone's asking you a specific question about a product, consider that someone who's interested in your service, and consider that if they came into your shop, for example, or if into your office and asked a question, you wouldn't just ignore them. So it's finding a careful balance with comments and engagement on social media adverts. Now, it's important to go regularly into Google Analytics and your insights, your social network insights provider, to monitor the ad. If it doesn't perform well initially, your chosen social network, so Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and whatnot, might decide to reduce the amount your ad's shown to people, which can be a big, big pain. So you need to keep checking performance and update your ad or start a new campaign if you suddenly see a slump, because that will likely be because that social network has decided that maybe your advert isn't quite as relevant to the audience as you thought it was, and so changes need to be made there. Now, once the campaign's done, reach back and pull out the goal statement you made at the start of the campaign and measure the performance based on those requirements. Obviously, you can measure performance in lots of different ways, but if you've set up your goal correctly at the beginning and you know exactly what you were trying to get out of it, then you'll be able to say, this was a successful advert, and take any learnings that you find from that ad and take them onto the next campaign to improve that one. So that's the central tenets, if you will, of social media advertising. Now I'm going to cover some of the things that are specific to each platform. First, I'm going to be talking about Facebook ads, then I'll be talking about Twitter, and then I'm going to hand over to my colleague Stephen Smith, who is going to talk you through LinkedIn advertising, YouTube advertising, and also the wonderful, glorious future of social media advertising. So latest figures on Facebook show that this platform has 144 billion, not quite there yet, 1.44 billion monthly active users. Now, with a number like that, you're kind of foolish not to try advertising on the platform, as long as you know your demographic is there and that it's right for your industry. One really, really integral and important thing to know is that Facebook advertising is these days delivered to significantly more mobile devices than desktops. As you can see from the chart there, although desktop revenue growth from ads has not grown at all, pretty much. They're getting way more money through mobile, and that's because they're showing it mostly to mobile. I was running a Facebook ad campaign recently and noted that Facebook had, through no decisions on my part, Facebook had decided that this ad is best suited for mobile users, and I think it was 95% of all video views were through a mobile device. So it's certainly not something to take lightly. So you do need to make sure that your call to action and landing page are suited to an on-the-go audience with little time or patience, and that this is really crucial, that they display perfectly on mobile devices, not just that they work, but also that they are enjoyable to use. So there's not too much information. If you've got any forms that you want people to fill in, make sure that they're right at the top so they don't have to scroll through loads of text to get there. So Facebook is best for advertising business to consumer apps, services and products directly to an audience you know is active on Facebook. That's primarily because people generally use Facebook in a personal capacity rather than a professional one. Now, when you start a campaign on Facebook and you decide to get going with one, it initially offers you a large number of different objectives for ads. So I'd recommend you become really familiar with these. You might know you have an image you want to post, for example, but you've got to ask yourself if the aim is to grow your community or to get clicks through to your website. These objectives offer very different advertising mechanics, so it's definitely worthwhile investigating the different types available and deciding what's most suitable to achieve your goal. And there's some really interesting targeting you can do within each type. So, for example, get installs of your app, anything to do with your app, you can target by device and by iOS as well. So if you've got an app and you want to target the latest users or people with an updated device, you can make sure you don't end up showing it to people with old iPhones and Android phones and whatnot. Now, one of the great features of Facebook ads is how niche you can get with your audience targeting. As people share so much on Facebook, Zuckerberg and friends get to learn a hell of a lot about them, which you can use to your advantage by targeting your ads to the right audience at the right time. For example, you could include or exclude specific postcodes and towns, as well as wider targeting like by country or state. As you can see there, I've for no apparent reason have excluded Swansea and Bridport, but then you can go as far as including all of Saudi Arabia. And also, as you can see, you can include people who live in this location, people who've moved recently, or people even just traveling around that location. So as you can see, Facebook knows a great deal about its audience, and this is why. So it can provide that information to you and allow you to target your ads effectively. So as you can see, if over on the right there, there's a huge number of demographic variables you can choose from in the targeting, relationship status, education level, job title, generation, it goes on and on and on. So I've used these parameters to target single English-speaking Generation X senior advisors with master's degrees and adult children who have recently moved and started a new job but are currently away from home. Now, I'd like to see the product with that niche consumer base. So, that's not going to be likely, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what you can do. But just because you can get that niche, it's not recommended that you do. If you were to do that in your targeting, then as you can see, the potential reach for that targeting is less than 1,000 people, which isn't going to get you a lot of conversions or click-throughs at all. You do want to get your potential reach in the green zone on that sort of chart in the top right there. Too broad and Facebook will, the ad fatigue will set in and the wrong people will see it, but you want to keep it in the green zone, and that's your sort of sweet spot for Facebook advertising. Obviously, Facebook doesn't just know demographic info about its users. It also knows a lot about their interests because of the Facebook pages they've shared and like and what they talk about online. You can therefore target interests as wide as football and as niche as Bolton Wanderers. When it comes to targeting interests, I would advise making sure that the Facebook pages you're targeting can be found in the interest field, as not all of them can be. So you might think, oh, there's that Facebook page, and that Facebook page. We want to target those. Don't build your entire campaign on the fact that you'll be looking at those competitors or that audience, and then find out when you come to actually put the advert together that when you type in, I don't know, the Curry Leaf Cafe, if there's a very specific restaurant or cafe near you that you want to target all the likers of, for small pages like that, there's a chance that when you type it into interest, it won't pop up. So I'd advise sort of playing around with this and then going back to decide on your target and your audience. So yeah. Now, when choosing Facebook pages whose likers I want to see the ad, I use a tool called SimilarWeb to look at the websites of the Facebook pages I'll be targeting in interests. You can see how successful that site is on Facebook by looking at what percentage of visits from social media comes from Facebook. A high percentage means its Facebook audience is highly engaged in social media, so their chances of actually engaging with something from you is a lot higher. So as you can see there, I've sort of searched for johnlewis.com. This is the free version. You can literally just go to the website, pop in a URL, and it'll give you a bunch of information, social click-throughs and engagement, it just being one of them. But if it's too small a website, sometimes it won't have the data. Obviously, you can get lots more tools if you pay for it, but it's a really handy tool for this kind of thing, and it's gratis, which is always good. Now, when you're doing your Facebook campaign and you're putting together your target audience and you put in your budget, Facebook will give you a daily estimated reach. And it's a good idea to take this figure with a bucket of salt because these figures can only be reached if your ad is super, super effective and monitored really, really closely with you tweaking and adjusting where necessary, which, although we'd obviously advise to always do that, it's just not always 100% possible to get the estimated daily reach. If you just sort of consider it as a figure that is there to show you how many more people you could reach if you increase your budget. So Facebook is basically saying, come on, give us a bit more money and you could get this figure, and you could get this figure, hence that that slider there giving you an idea of sort of what the potential reach could be. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend adding that to any ROI or any goal stats or really focusing that on a figure. So one of the really neat things you can do with Facebook advertising, and this is, I think, hidden in advanced options, which is crazy considering this is super, super, super useful, is it offers advert scheduling. And this enables you to only show your ad at a particular time of day. For example, and crazy example, I know, and this is the one I've used here, if you wanted to advertise a product to help those with insomnia, you could set the ad to run only between 2 and 5 a.m. when your audience will be awake and thinking about insomnia. So, you can, most of us will probably go for the 9 to 5 or the 9 to late evening, but you can think about your product, think about your service, and think about the times of day when your audience is online. You could find yourself saving a lot of money by only targeting the few hours that you know your audience is likely to be on Facebook. Now, it's worth considering offering slightly different ads tailored to different segments of your target audience. These could have images with different color schemes or content depending on the gender, age, and so forth of that audience segment. Or if your business has various locations in the country, you could run different ads mentioning different towns in the copy to point out that, you know, if someone sees that ad and they're in Bolton, this ad is for them. Now, it's important to remember that your ad isn't searchable or visible on your page, unless, of course, it's a boosted post, but that's the exception rather than the rule. So you do need to offer something that can provide value immediately on Facebook, rather than the kind of content that will make people think, you know, I'll look at that later, because they won't be able to, you know, they won't be able to come back and find that ad again. So that's why timed offers, apps and tools, promo codes and videos are all very immediate ways of getting conversions through Facebook advertising. Things that require nurture and a more lengthy process in order to get someone's interest in your product or service don't go down so well on Facebook, but they do work well in Twitter and LinkedIn, which we'll be talking about in a bit. Now, videos work particularly well on Facebook, but one thing I've learned is to be sure to check out the number of people who have watched your clip to the 100% mark, and you can do that by looking at the video engagement columns in the Facebook Ads Manager. You can also see how many people got 10 seconds in, 50% in, and so forth, and this really does give you a much better idea of how your video has actually performed. If you remember what I said about Facebook delivering to primarily, you know, around 95% of mobile devices, and also the fact that on mobile devices videos play free, bear in mind then that Facebook could be just, yeah, in the video views column, it could be giving you a massively bloated figure compared to how many people actually watched the whole clip, were really engaged, watched it all the way through, and got to the very end to see your final card and your end title card and your call to action. So, and obviously you can look at things like the click-throughs and the clicks to website, and that's all they're all kind of no-brainers. But I just figured it was really important to point this one out because not everyone knows about this one. So, just before I go on to talk about Twitter, just wanted to quickly talk about multi-product or carousel posts. This is one of the latest additions to Facebook advertising, and it displays on mobile devices and allows the viewer to swipe through a few different images and links, which is a really neat feature, and it looks pretty swanky. This is obviously perfect if you're selling a product range, but it is worth trying to be a bit experimental with it. For example, White Hat Media, we could run a carousel ad showing lots of pictures showcasing our services, so SEO, social media, insight, reporting, web development, and you know, we'd have like a different logo or a different photo for each one of those. So don't feel that reasonably new feature, it has to be limited to products. And bear in mind that whenever it comes to a brand new feature that Facebook's offering, the first people to use it in a way that the others aren't using it really do stand out, because not only are people seeing a new type of ad, they're seeing a new type of use of a new type of ad, so it becomes even more unique. So that's Facebook advertising tips. I just wanted to share a few more with you before I move on to talk about Twitter advertising. I'd say it's a good idea to put aside some budget, small amount, to manually boost posts that you see are performing well. So if you're just doing your regular content scheduling and you see one attracting a lot of interest, you don't have to go through the whole rigmarole of going through a campaign, start a new campaign. You can literally just click boost post on the post itself, and that will give you a lot of options to promote it. If you've got an email list of contacts you want to contact via Facebook, you can use the custom audience feature, but be careful with this, is if you get too direct, people will kind of get freaked out. So I wouldn't, like in your ad, be tempted to acknowledge that you know someone is a previous customer of yours. You might as well be saying, hey, Dave Gilbert, and that's really going to freak people out. And finally, if you've got a landing page and you're using landing pages with your Facebook ads, be sure to add a tracking pixel to the page so you can target people who have visited your website already. That's another clever sort of social media way of remarketing. So your Facebook ad will not so much follow them, but it will be more likely to appear to someone who's already shown an interest in your website. So that is Facebook advertising. To move on to Twitter, when it comes to Twitter, there's a lot of crossover with Facebook, such as audience targeting. So I'm going to focus on the elements unique to Twitter advertising. As you can see, the Twitter audience is growing, but not nearly as much as Facebook. It currently stands at 304 million monthly active users, which is nearly a fifth of Facebook's. It's an interesting figure, really, because the way tweets have really intercepted popular culture, the news, online journalism, that kind of thing, you would think that those two are kind of on an even keel, as you know, but they are doing very different things, and at present, Twitter is kind of struggling to see the growth spurt that Facebook is, but nonetheless, it's still a very powerful tool for advertising. There's a huge variety of people using Twitter, both in a personal and professional capacity. This puts it somewhere between LinkedIn and Facebook in terms of audience. Both B2Cs and B2Bs should find some success with well-targeted Twitter ad campaigns. There are three main types of Twitter ad: promoted accounts, promoted trends, and promoted tweets. And there are some different versions of these, but these are the sort of three main areas. So if I just quickly go over those for you. Promoted accounts will help you build your follower base, and you can target specific Twitter handles you want to reach the followers of. Promoted trends can help you promote a particular event or campaign by having your hashtag appear in the popular What's Trending section, but these can cost in the hundreds of thousands just for 24 hours in that trends section. So yeah, possibly not for everyone. Now, a much cheaper option is the standard but still very powerful promoted tweet, which can be used in a variety of clever ways and can help you get retweets, clicks, followers, and much more. This is what I'd recommend starting your Twitter campaign with, really. But before you get started, take a look at a tool like Social Bro, which enables you to learn all about your own followers and the followers of brands you're either competing with or want to emulate. You can find the biggest influencers in your industry and see how likely they are to retweet and engage with your campaign. So that's a really useful tool when it comes to Twitter advertising. Now, aside from the standard promoted tweet, there are two reasonably recent additions to Twitter's ads arsenal that should be of particular interest to B2Bs. The first is the website card, which really stands out if you have a bold and striking image coupled with very brief but enticing copy. I'd recommend not bothering to include Twitter handles or hashtags in these ads, as they just give the viewer something other to do than the desired action, which is click through to your site. So if you just remember, you want someone to click that link. So any other potential links are just going to complicate matters and make them less likely to click on that particular one and take them somewhere else, which is not what you want. Another recent addition is lead generation cards, which allow B2Bs to collect data directly within Twitter. This reduces the number of clicks needed to convert and can significantly improve conversion rate over a standard promoted tweet. But first, think of your audience and ask yourself if they're in a demographic that's comfortable providing personal email details on such a whim, because not everyone is. And I think the way that Twitter presents these lead generation cards, some people may feel that their information is being shared publicly. So that's something that they could feasibly work on making a bit more clear. But if you know that your audience is the type to just hand their email address to anyone for any kind of amazing offer, then yeah, by all means go for it. As for B2Cs, if you've got some highly creative and attention-grabbing video content, promoted videos are the recommended way to go. These are still a fairly recent addition, and because of this, they'll automatically stand out in the Twitter feed. If you just pick an intriguing thumbnail that just begs to be clicked on, and do that and watch the views roll in. Because if you just imagine you're scrolling through your news feed, pictures stand out, but really interesting video clips really do stand out as well. Obviously, you've got that bright blue circle in the middle highlighting that it's a tweet, so highlighting that it's a video rather. And so yeah, that's a decent option. But if you don't want to go down any of those routes, trying out those fancy ads, we'd recommend starting off with a very simple promoted tweet. These come with much larger images, so there's a benefit there, larger than the previous cards and video I mentioned. So if the content you're hoping to share, perhaps for nurture and data collection purposes, if that can be coupled with eye-catching imagery, you could really save yourself a lot of money on engagement costs. The only drawback is that if you do want to add an image to a promoted tweet, you'll need to include the shortened image URL in the actual tweet itself, which does limit your space for creative copy. And also then you've got 2 links, one to the landing page and one to the image. And if they're too close to each other, people might just click the image and not end up in the right place. So bear in mind that when you're sort of composing your tweets, try and keep those two URLs separate if that's something you're going to do. And I'd also recommend A/B testing 2 different versions of the promoted tweet, perhaps one with an image and one without, one with blaringly obvious copy and one with a bit more cryptic, maybe with an ellipsis and a question mark, asking people to find more out. Because there's all sorts of different approaches you can take, and it's always worth trying a few at the same time. So much like Facebook, you can target Twitter users by their interests using predefined interest categories or by targeting the followers of specific brand handles. And also like Facebook, you can import email address lists and remarket to users who have previously visited your website. Now, because Twitter doesn't hoover up tons and tons and tons of data, or at least not quite as much as Facebook, your audience targeting is more limited, and I think you're restricted to interests and some demographic elements. Certainly, I don't think that there are any options there to allow you to find out if someone's recently moved home. But as Twitter gains pace, that's certainly something we could see in the future. Now, as I mentioned before, it's really important to run more than one ad at a time. With Twitter, we'd recommend testing at least 3 with different messaging in the tweet. This also helps to avoid the ever-present risk of Twitter sidelining your ad if it's initially unsuccessful. But by running 3 or more ads, you increase the chance of one of them performing well. After about a week, you can delete the underperforming ads and create new ones based on the successful one. I say a week because it's a good period of time to actually gather enough data to take any learnings away. However, it's worth, if Twitter has sidelined it after 2 days, then realistically you can say, yeah, that ad was not successful. So if you've got 3 running at the same time, you can switch that one off and move along with the successful ones. According to a recent report, mobile advertising revenue was 89% of Twitter's total advertising revenue last year. Considering so many promoted tweets are viewed on mobile devices, it would be pretty foolish to link yours to a site that's unsuitable for mobile. So you do have to ensure more than ever that your landing pages, at the very, very least, are fully optimized for mobile and present a really simple, clear journey from the tweet to the on-page conversion with little distraction or clutter. So just before I hand over to Stephen, here are my final tips for advertising on Twitter. Like Facebook, Twitter offers you the ability to add a tracking pixel to your landing page in order to track conversions. So that's obviously a must if you're using landing pages. If you're trying to get ebook or report downloads, I'd consider using a graphic version of a particularly interesting statistic or quote as the image, because that can get attention and really shows what's in store for people who download your ebook and look at your article. And that has worked very well for ourselves and our clients in the past. And finally, I'd just start by experimenting with promoted tweets on a small budget, then try out other formats if your budget allows it and if the content's of a really, really high quality. So yeah, I hope that was all useful stuff for you. I'm going to hand over to Stephen now. Thanks for listening. And yeah, let's talk about LinkedIn ads. Cheers.
Okay. Thank you, Jamie, for that. Can everyone hear me? All right, so I'm going to talk about LinkedIn advertising, follow up with YouTube advertising, and then we're going to look at the exciting future of social media advertising, some of the things that you may be able to do, some of the new platforms, etc. Okay, so LinkedIn offers a pretty unique prospect among social networks. Currently has around 364 million members, and is obviously a powerful B2B resource for all companies looking to target B2B. Although there are no confirmed figures for the active user base, there are approximately 187 million monthly unique visitors. This means that there's a huge amount of traffic visiting the site monthly, and all of it's business related. LinkedIn, its purported aim to reach 3 billion users, giving members unprecedented access to a vast wealth of economic opportunities across the globe, And for all of us here in the UK, currently 70% of members are from outside the US. I believe in the UK it's around 18 million members, which is about a third of the population, so it's pretty well used in the UK. So why would you want to choose LinkedIn? Firstly, you've got the largest professional-only network of all the social networks, and it's global. Combine that with a professional mindset where discussion is predominantly focused on business and business opportunities, and you're onto a pretty clear winner. But then you've also got the third reason, perhaps the most important from an advertising perspective, is the highly specific advertising options, allowing you to reach members across all fields and industries, skill sets, educational levels, and more. The outcome of all this is that you get incredibly relevant results time after time, from employers looking to target a certain skill set to something we use a lot, lead nurture campaigns focused on finding opportunities within specific niches. So with that in mind, how can you reach out to these opportunities? There are currently 3 self-serve ad types. There are more ad types for companies with a larger advertising budget. Currently, it's £15,000 per quarter for various other types of display and lead nurture advertising formats. But I'm just going to look at the 3 self-serve ones. So the first 2 are sponsored updates and direct sponsored updates, which both appear as standard posts within a person's newsfeed. These are for the most part similar, with one distinct difference. Sponsored updates are posts that appear on your company page feed. Direct sponsored updates don't appear on your company page, but have the same targeting options and look and work in the same way. So you might ask yourself why you'd want to choose direct sponsored updates over sponsored updates, and the benefit is rather straightforward. Direct sponsored updates allow you to test your copy before posting. Say before posting sponsored updates, you might want to just test whether the copy is going to work from an advertising perspective. And they also allow you to say create 3 or 4 slightly different adverts for slightly different audiences, but perhaps where you'd want to offer the same content or ebook or white paper download or whatever you'd want to do. And so instead of posting one, having one sponsored update that features on your company page, you could have 3 or 4 slightly different ones that aren't going to clutter up people's news feeds, but will appear for different audiences. You can use direct sponsored updates and to create variations of the same ads for different audiences, and and yeah, that's hugely beneficial. The third type then is text ads, and these are the only other type of self-serve ads. They appear along the sidebar of your newsfeed on LinkedIn or on LinkedIn search results page. They also feature at the top of certain pages without the image, as you can see in that example below. I'd use these ads with a bit of caution. They can be valuable, but the click-through rate is often diabolically unimaginably low. So low that often you wouldn't want to use it, but sometimes it does work. If you're doing if you have a really long campaign, you can use them. And it's also sometimes worth doing it just to test for sponsoring updates. So you can test if your audience is responsive to a particular type of ad copy or a particular type of content that you want to promote. And so just bear in mind that the CTR is pretty low, but by setting your campaign time frame pretty long, you can generate enough clicks to make it work. And then what I'd suggest is just refreshing the ad every couple of weeks, and just keep duplicating those ads and keep them running. It takes a minimal amount of effort, and then you can keep those clicks coming in. Although there'll be few, often the clicks from LinkedIn are more valuable. So moving on to strategy and what content you should use, we found some great success with using it as the first step in a lead generation cycle. In particular, we found driving audiences to data capture forms works pretty well. We offer up content such as ebooks, white papers, research reports, anything that you can bring together with some research that's not currently out there in the industry, and that's relevant to your industry as well. And then target your specific audiences with a sponsored update, driving them back to your website. We then capture that data and then use emails to send out further content, further ebooks and things like that. Another way LinkedIn can work for you is by building followers to your company page, by sponsoring particular content that you know your industry sector is going to like, or perhaps it's received quite a number of engagement. You can then slowly build up a follower account. So perhaps it might be industry-related news, or by asking questions, or by offering some blog content. And unlike Facebook, LinkedIn doesn't resort to the same organic limiting factors for your general updates. So your organic reach of your content is generally pretty good. I'd say around 2/5 of your newsfeed will see your posts, and of course that can grow with further engagement. So by building a good follower base, you can then target them with other content. As I've said previously, the audience target for LinkedIn is quite advanced. You don't get the kind of behavioral targeting you might get that you do get with Facebook, but your audience is business focused, so it makes up for it there by being quite specific audience that you're targeting. So initially you set a location. As I said, UK is around 18 million members. Then select specific criteria to narrow your audience. LinkedIn allows you to target any information passed over by the user. So when you've completed your profile, you'll add in lots of data about what company you're currently working at, your skill set, your educational background, and that sort of information. So that means that you can target things like group membership, or the industry sector people are in, or even the size of company that a person's working in. Interestingly, you can also target within specific companies, allowing you to focus your adverts on competitors or potential clients that you might want to target with your content. So it does get quite detailed, but not anything quite like Facebook, but it's highly valuable because it is a business audience. One tip is for sponsored updates, try and keep your audience fairly sizable to ensure your ad is effectively displayed amongst a large group. This ensures that clicks remain high, impressions are high, the ad doesn't suffer from some of the problems I'm going to get to in the next slide. Because here's some of the common problems that you might get with LinkedIn's ad platform. So firstly, the audience size is too narrow. Sometimes if you've got specific niches, LinkedIn just won't have enough data on them to send ads to. To avoid this, simply increase the audience size. You might want to do some extra research on your audience to see if there's another way to get at them. For instance, if you've targeted a specific skill that shows as too narrow, perhaps instead target their sector and combine it with a few known job titles. Or alternatively, target a larger audience and use the copy in the ad itself to speak to a specific audience within that large audience, which should then reduce erroneous clicks. The second, which is ad fatigue. This is common across all social platforms, and Jamie touched upon it when talking about Facebook. Once you've hit the same audience a number of times, people of course get bored with your ad. And to get around this, social networks start sort of dropping your advert because they don't want to show it to the same people again and again and again. So depending on your audience size, this could happen after a week or perhaps after 2 or 3 weeks. What you want to do then to avoid this is simply create a new ad, replace the old one. Either just create new copy, new image, perhaps try and test it with direct sponsored updates, or duplicate it again and show it to the advert and show it to the same audience. you should see some better results, but only for a short amount of time. Finally, sometimes your ad will get dropped. Typically, this happens because it's just not generating enough clicks. Some reports suggest that this happens if you don't get a click-through rate above 0.2% within the first 3,000 impressions of your advert. So although we have seen this vary, so it's not a specific rule that you should stick to, but if you do see your ad getting dropped fairly recently after you've started it, say after a few days, what you'd want to do is simply refresh your ad copy, refresh your image, and start it again. Okay, so let's talk about billing quickly, or sort of talk about budgets quickly. You want to work out prior to starting what an acceptable cost per acquisition is, or what you'd like to see in return for your investment, and then work out how much your budget is and the average cost per click, or CPM if you're looking for brand awareness. Work out what you should be bidding on. And then again, highly target your copy to your audience, making sure that when you pay, you're getting what you want in return. So figuring out beforehand helps you avoid any mistakes later on. And then a few final tips for LinkedIn advertising. Big tip then, as I've mentioned before, is to test your copy with direct sponsored updates. You can also test images and test audiences with these two. This just allows you to get a better understanding of how the platform works and whether your advert works. And then it'll allow you to get an understanding of what your return on investment might be. If you've got particularly great results from an advert, why not run it again? You can quickly create a duplicate ad. It takes about 10 seconds to duplicate an ad. And then run it over whatever time frame you want. We'd suggest leaving perhaps a gap of about a month after you've ran a particularly good ad to do that again. And then if your audience is too narrow, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, so I'd suggest creating a second advert with a much larger audience. This often allows you to get relevant clicks, but also to test whether you can get more clicks from broadening out your audience. And finally, remember that you're marketing your content, so make sure it sticks out, is relevant, and is authentic to the experience that your audience wants to see. Finally, we've got a featured example. So this is a particularly successful ad that we ran fairly recently. So we achieved a pretty good cost per acquisition of £7 for a customer. Yeah. So that worked out well for us, and also a 25% plus conversion rate on the landing pages. Now, of course, the landing page is separate from the advert, and it is recommended that not only is it responsive for mobile, but it also optimized for conversions, make it clear, make it clean, make it fairly simple to fill out your data capture form. But of course, the reason that doesn't quite explain why the conversion rate is so high, and the reason really is that because you're targeting a fairly narrow audience, and what you're sending them is something that they're interested in, it ensures that a lot of the people that land there actually end up putting their data in the form and downloading the content. Okay, so let's move on to YouTube advertising. So what can the average business get from this platform? Of course, it's a video-only platform, so your content is going to have to be video, but it's worth remembering that it's the most popular video platform. It allows for easily discoverable video, and the users are expected to double to 1.5 billion in 2016. So there's a huge audience out there. So here's a great selling point, and it's one that you may have seen before. Online video in general works well at convincing customers to purchase your products. And as we can see, YouTube itself beats TV at influencer product purchasing. Everyone does this, and we all do it. Where do we head to when we want to know more about a product? We head to YouTube and we search for a video. And that's why it works so well for product purchases, because people go there looking for a video that they're interested in about a product that they want to buy, and this just helps them make their decision for them. Okay, so let's look at the advert types for YouTube. First, we're going to look at in-display ads. So these feature to the right of the feature video, as you can see in the clip there, the image there, and above the suggestions list, so where it says beside videos. But it also features in the search page and in the watch pages, as well as the home pages and in the mobile app. And then there are slightly different in-stream videos. In-stream are the most common ones, probably the ones you'd see most frequently, and they're the ones that happen pre-roll, mid-roll, post-roll, which is what they're called. That's basically the start of the advert, the start of the video that you're going to watch, midway through the video if it's a particularly long video, or at the end of the video. And there are 3 slightly different types of these. So you've got Skippable Video Ad, which is your standard one. That's before, during, or after the feature video, allowing the viewer to skip the ad after 5 seconds. Usually with these advert types, you pay after 30 seconds, or if a customer has engaged with your video. Then we've got non-skippable video ads and long non-skippable video ads. Your non-skippable video ads are generally short, generally 5 to 10 seconds. Your long non-skippable ads, anything up to 30 seconds. They cost slightly more, but obviously it means that the viewer can't skip past your video. So as we talked about, massive worldwide reach. Targeting options allow you to target anywhere in the world, ensuring that you can reach all of their 1 billion active monthly users. Sophisticated targeting features. So how do you reach users on YouTube? There are a number of different ways. You can reach by demographic, so that's by age, gender, location. You can reach by interests as well. So if they've shown particular interest in certain makeup, sports, motorcycles, pretty much whatever you can imagine features on YouTube. You can also target by topics. This is a display and video feature, so it means targeting by the video topic category. So what category the video has been given by the uploader. And finally, you can target by keywords. So when a person types keywords into the search bar, when they're looking for a video, you can get results for that as well. You can also, as shown in the example, you can also do negative targeting, both at the campaign level and the group level. And this all features within AdWords, so you have to set up an AdWords account that's linked to your YouTube account to start doing these types of adverts. Okay, we're going to go through a few tips for these 3 different types. Okay, so you want to target users on informational keywords for display ads for both B2B and B2C. Aim for maybe 1.5 minutes of video content within a video, and then provide as much information as possible within that video. So because the user will have to click through and then watch your video. This works really well for informational videos because people are looking for the information that is within your video, and that's why they work so well. You only pay on clicks on the ad, so click-throughs from different parts of YouTube. So it benefits having that sort of informational content within the video. Next, in-stream advertising tips. So firstly and foremost is optimize the first few seconds of the ad. Make the first few seconds extremely watchable, because you're paying after 30 seconds or when people click. You want people to continue watching it, and you want people not to skip. You want people to actually spend your money, if you will. because you want them to be interested in what you're doing. Another tip is perhaps cut up a longer in display type advert. So where you've got, say, a 1.5-minute advert, cut a smaller version, and then use that for an in-stream one. Obviously, you want to set up annotations on your video to direct people off-site, or perhaps onto another platform like Facebook, where they can share the video and then more people will see it. Viewers tend to tolerate mid-roll video ads more than pre-roll, so you might want to think about the way of placing your advert, and perhaps what video you're going to be using, and whether that would be best placed before the video they want to watch, or in mid-roll, or at the end. And then finally, the final tip is make sure your voiceover is effective, as some people often listen without watching. Now, one particularly good example of an in-stream video I remember seeing is it was actually featured in the middle of a playlist of songs, and it was a music video, because it was relevant to my listening experience. It didn't disrupt it, and I barely even noticed it was there, but I did notice there was a change in the songs and a change in the music that I was listening to. So I looked at it, and then I became familiar with that artist. So I think one of the most important factors is think about the placement of your ad when you are creating your video. If you know you're going to be advertising on YouTube, it's always worth, when you're creating your advert, thinking about the different ways it could be advertised, because that will lend itself to the structure of the ad, type of ad that you're making, and if you make something that's relevant to your audience, then it should work better. Okay, finally, non-skippable advertising. So of course you don't want to annoy your audience. You want to make sure these ads are particularly engaging, informative, relevant to your target audience, because you don't want to put people off of watching their video. Otherwise they'll get annoyed. They might take it off to Twitter and tweet about it to their friends. You want to try and get a viewer to take an action within the first 30 seconds, because within that 30-second period, because you are paying for that time, and it's more expensive than the skippable ads. You're paying for that time, so make sure they do something. They make it. There is an action there. So drive them off onto your website, or get them to share the content, whatever it is. Finally, get to the point quickly and tell a great story, because obviously stories connect with people. Finally, then, the final part of this webinar, we're going to look at the future of social media advertising. So I'm just going to look at a few platforms and discuss some of the ways to use it, that they might be used in the future. So Tumblr, then. Tumblr is a B2C platform of highly engaged and loyal users, with over 70% of them stating that the Tumblr dashboard is their favorite place to stay online. Brands have had mixed results with the current advertising, which is basically sponsored posts currently, because the site sort of follows its own rules. So you can get valuable results, but you have to be aware of the potential pitfalls of painstakingly crafting something you think is brilliant, then gets turned into some awful meme about how terrible your marketing is and how you don't know your demographic at all. Pinterest just announced buyable pins in the US for certain companies. This should be potentially available in the UK perhaps next year. So obviously Pinterest is an image-based platform, so it's about sharing images. So with this sort of thing, it makes a lot of sense to kind of combine that with a kind of e-commerce side. So selling pins was quite obvious, I think. Potentially great opportunity, and we look forward to seeing what happens there in the future. Finally, Instagram. You can buy adverts if you're a particular company with a huge amount of money. Adverts we've seen before come from brands like Disneyland and GoPro, as well as sort of high-end fashion brands and the like. I think this will include both images and video when they finally sort of make it a self-serve platform. What's sort of common between all these social media platforms is they like to build their user base first before starting the advertising. So it's going to take a long while before we get there, but we should see these platforms start using sort of self-serve adverts soon. Okay, let's look at Reddit then. So similar to Tumblr, and that you're likely to go viral, but perhaps not for the reasons you'd like. A hugely loyal user base means that if you don't know the particular language they use, the sort of rules of conversation, you might end up failing. So beware. You can purchase adverts now as a type of sponsored post. The data suggests that it's pretty cost effective. However, of course, because of the type of platform, opportunities for engagement with the brand are minimal. But if you play your cards right, it could be hugely valuable. Finally, Snapchat. So currently, Snapchat offers Discover and Live advert types, which are the two on the right, for brands looking to engage with the 100 million daily active users. However, with a reported ad inventory cost CPM at $100, you may find that it's slightly out of the average company's reach. However, sponsored snaps have been toyed with. That would be sort of snaps that would come direct to users rather than in the Discover section of the app. And that might provide a better way of brands communicating, and a more cost-effective way, brands communicating with the B2C audience. Okay, so what would the next big thing be? Periscope or Meerkat, potentially. These social live stream platforms are basically exactly what we're doing here, which is live streaming. So the possibility for it to move to a place where it becomes feasible for companies and advertisers is there. However, take up on these platforms has been minimal, even with the backing of Twitter in the case of Periscope. So I think we've got to watch this space. But the common thread between all these, so what we've seen is platforms become more and more distinct and carve out their own demographics and their own audiences. And for your adverts to work, it's important for it to be quote unquote native. You've got to know your audience, you've got to know the demographic, you've got to know the platform, the language, the rules of engagement there. So this means you might have to pull back a bit on the disruptive element of your advertising, but in the end, the results will come from being relative and specific to that platform and their audience, and not running the same ad across, say, Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat, and hoping that they'd all work exactly the same. Okay, so that's we've come to the end of our webinar. Do we have any questions? Let's just open up. No questions. Okay, very good. Okay, so thank you very much for listening to me, Stephen Smith, and Jamie Pittman, who spoke earlier. And of course, you can download a free ebook on how to measure social media effectively by going to that bit.ly link there, or heading to our website and emailing us.